From the National Newsroom of the Canadian Press, I'm Rob Westgate. Iran, the U.S., and Israel say they've reached a deal for a 2-week ceasefire. Tehran says it would negotiate with the United States in Islamabad beginning Friday. Now, Trump initially said Iran proposed a workable 10-point plan, but later called the plan fraudulent without elaborating. Residents of Tel Aviv are taking the news of the ceasefire with a grain of salt, as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made it clear that the fight against Hezbollah in Lebanon will continue unabated. Back home now, where the anticipation is growing on the political front, with 3 federal by-elections coming up that could change the landscape. Observers note that 2 of the elections, both in Toronto, will likely be won by the Liberals, but the third, in the hotly contested Quebec riding of Terrebonne, could be the most consequential. Wins in both Toronto ridings would give the Liberals 172 seats, the bare minimum for a majority government. However, the House Speaker is a Liberal, so the government and opposition parties would have each 171 voting members, making that seat in Terrebonne the difference. The former health official who declared British Columbia's 2016 public health emergency over opioid overdoses says the initial move brought more attention to the crisis. Dr. Perry Kendall says there were encouraging signs when the number of deaths dropped in 2019, but then they spiked dramatically a year later during the COVID-19 pandemic.
What would have happened after that if COVID hadn't come along? I have no idea. I would like to think that, we would have gotten on top of it and been able to manage it because it looked like we made a big start.
More than 18,000 people have died from toxic, illicit drugs since the emergency was declared nearly 10 years ago. A new report says it might be a busy market for mergers and acquisitions in Canada's oil patch later this year, but Deloitte Canada partner Andrew Botterill says that's only if the geopolitical mayhem eases enough for buyers and sellers to find common ground on price. He says oil traders seem to believe some calm may be restored later this year, with contracts for delivery in the fall and winter months dropping below $80 US a barrel.
So I think what that shows the market right now is that there's this belief that while there's a lot of volatility in the short term, through the rest of the year, we should see things settle down. We should see more consistent supply chains that will still lead to elevated prices to what we were looking at a year ago, but maybe not quite what we're seeing today.
Deloitte is forecasting a 2026 average West Texas Intermediate oil price of $85 US and a return to pre-war prices by 2028. And finally, advocates are calling for long-term, stable federal funding to ensure safety and prosperity for Indigenous women and girls. Hilda Anderson-Pyers, president of the National Family and Survivors Circle, says groups like hers still don't know if they'll be receiving continued funding from Ottawa, which ultimately undermines the work to address the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. This is the Canadian Press. In sports, the Toronto Blue Jays came up short in their World Series rematch with the Los Angeles Dodgers, losing 4-1. Dodgers starter Yoshinobu Yamamoto making his first appearance at Rogers Center since earning the win in Game 7 last fall. Now over to the NBA, where the Toronto Raptors find the win column, posting a 121-95 victory over the Miami Heat. Scotty Barnes had 25 points as the Raps look to tighten their grip on the 6th and final playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. And finally, to the National Hockey League we go, where the Utah Mammoth edged out the Edmonton Oilers in overtime. 6-5 the final, Clayton Keller scoring the winner 33 seconds into the extra frame. The Vegas Golden Knights held on to beat the Vancouver Canucks 2-1. The Ottawa Senators moved closer to a playoff appearance with a 6-2 victory over the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Calgary Flames fall to the Dallas Stars 2-1 in OT, and the Montreal Canadiens beat the Florida Panthers 4-3 in a shootout. From the Canadian Press, I'm Rob Westgate.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to follow and subscribe. For more of today's top stories, visit thecanadianpressnews.ca.